Hey, I'm Dr. Sherry Walling. I'm a clinical psychologist for entrepreneurs and high performers. I spend a lot of time talking with people about their fears about therapy. And here's the thing, you should be afraid. And I'll tell you why in this video. When people engage in psychotherapy or any really focused, intense personal development process, the thing that they're most afraid of is that it's going to work. And if it works, that means a few things. One, it means you're likely to change. And as much as we say we want change, most of us are actually quite afraid of change. And if we have been successful in our lives, we've used a set of tools to get us to this point. And the idea that we may need to abandon some of those tools, leave them behind, learn new strategies, practice new ways of self-control or new emotional maturity, it sounds good on paper, but mostly we really don't want to do that because we already have a thing that works, and why would we mess with that, right? The other thing that's really scary about personal growth or development working is that we become more responsible. Once we understand the ways that our early life experiences, our trauma, our pathology are playing out in our current life, we've taken the blinders off and we're now responsible for continuing in those patterns, for continuing in that brokenness. We maybe aren't responsible for the things that happened that hurt us in the first place, but once we know, once we understand, once we put the pieces together, we are culpable for how we continue on in those patterns and in those processes. And frankly, being in the dark or being in a victim role is a little bit easier because we can sort of blame somebody else, or we can turn a blind eye to the ways that our hurt is carried forward into us hurting other people. So when we do our work, when we engage in a personal development process, we're responsible and we can't sort of pretend that we don't know better anymore. The third thing that probably should make you afraid of doing psychotherapy or personal development work is that the system of all of your relationships is based on who you are right now in this moment and who you've been in the past. So if you make significant changes to how you operate, how you communicate, how you care for yourself, how you have boundaries, how you interact with others, it's going to have implications for every personal and professional relationship that you have. In some cases, that's going to be wonderful. Your partner will be so delighted that suddenly you've learned to communicate with more kindness and more empathy. But in other cases, the structure of the relationship, the foundation of the relationship will be shaken or cracked. And it may have implications for how you move forward. You may need to change some of your relationships, to find new friendships, to find new mentors, to find new colleagues. And that, of course, creates a lot of upheaval and distress. People have told me directly, I don't want to do deeper work. I don't want to do therapy. I don't want to really look inside of myself because I don't want to end up leaving my marriage, or I don't want to, have to change jobs or shift the way that I'm running my business. And when people say that to me, it's so interesting because it's sort of like, okay, you kind of know that something isn't well. You know that there's a level of healing or change or disruption that probably would be very good for you. But you are perhaps very right in realizing that the logistics may be consequential and maybe you don't want to walk through that door. I will say to that person, there's often a lot that can be done to repair a dysfunctional relationship that comes before needing to abruptly end it. So I tend not to be so afraid because I believe that most of us deep down really want to be whole and well. And so when we begin a process and then invite our partners or significant others into that process, often, not always, but often they're up for it. They'll reciprocate. They'll join us in the work. Another reason that you potentially are or should be afraid of doing deeper personal development work, deeper healing, is that when you change, you open up the possibility of a whole other level of what can happen in your life. And so when you take care of the shadows and the pieces of yourself that have been holding you back or keeping you in unhelpful assumptions or problematic patterns, then suddenly a bunch of new possibilities open up to you. So this safe little kingdom that you've constructed up to this point in your life suddenly gets to be very small, and you become aware that more is possible. And that can be scary because it can not necessarily make you discontent with what you have, but help you to know that there's much more that's possible for you. And then you're confronted with the choice of, do I continue to deepen? Do I continue to do this work? Do I continue to push forward into my full potential? Or do I kind of stay here where I am comfortable and where I know the lay of the land and where I'm already the king or queen and nobody challenges me? So when you grow and you level up, you in some way start over. You start at the bottom of the next mountain. Maybe you've climbed up one mountain or one hill, feeling comfortable with the view, but when you do your inner work, there's usually another mountain and maybe another mountain that are higher and more challenging, but also have an amazing view. The bottom line is that people are afraid of personal development because they're afraid of the disruption that it will cause. And probably people have heard stories about someone doing psychotherapy or doing ayahuasca and coming home and going on a 6-month road trip and leaving their marriage and, going to live in an ashram or something. And maybe that's the right choice for them. I don't know. But I also think that those edge cases become an excuse, and they keep us in small lives, in small worlds, and they keep us in our own pain much longer than is needed. So finding the courage and the will to step into some potential disruption in the name of healing, I think is a pretty good risk. And again, if you are growing thoughtfully, slowly, and communicating with your really important people about what's changing and shifting inside of you, chances are they'll come along, or they'll be inspired to accept their own invitation into growth and join you maybe on a parallel process. So bottom line is, if you are afraid of change, if you are afraid of responsibility, if you are afraid of leveling up, if you are afraid of disruption in your relationships, and you want everything to stay just as it is, nice and small and controlled and perhaps a little bit uncomfortable, then definitely don't do psychotherapy or coaching or plant medicine or something that opens you to the possibility of your own depth and healing. Obviously, this video is a little bit tongue-in-cheek because I think that the courage to look to the parts of you that are unhealed and the courage to take steps towards more wholeness and greater potential is one of the best human stories. It's the human story that I am involved with every day in my life as a psychologist and as an executive coach, in helping people get to the top of the mountain they're on, celebrate it, and then look around for the next mountain. There is so much possibility inside each of us. And so to be afraid to see that or to decide to play small, I just think is sort of shortchanging the extraordinary life that's possible when we do the hard work to get there. So if you are interested in more tactics and strategies to living an extraordinary life while working on your healing and running a business, check out ZenFounder.com, where you have lots of information to help you on your journey, as well as information about working with me if that's something that is of interest to you. Hit like and subscribe to this video so that you see all of the content that I'm sharing, and I will see you next week.